so much for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm sad I'm not with you all in Munich, but I believe I'm connected all over the world with everyone else who is watching online. It's an honor to present today alongside some of the most influential scientists in this industry. My role is to support the marketing conversation around creatine for women. There is a science to marketing that can inform our strategies and our storytelling. At the same time, brands need the kind of data that consumers want to learn. It takes science to mine that data and help us tell stories from an evidence-based perspective. So here we go. I have some disclosures. You can see them here as an advisory member to the Creatine for Health Scientific Advisory Board. And I certainly have for decades worked in the field, writing and communicating about nutrition, health, and performance, including with creatine. Well, why am I here? Well, I am very passionate, as many of you know, about nutrition for health and performance, wellness, and to be able to do our best throughout our lifetimes. I found myself in a position that I never expected. I had become quite sedentary during the beginning of the pandemic, shutting down my own practice and supporting my husband's periodontal practice as the front office person because people left the field of dentistry if they didn't have to run a practice. And so I went in to take the role of the front office person. You are all aware of the stress that we all went through during that time. Keeping a dental office open was particularly frightening. I must say it was only about a mile and a half from where my husband's office is in Redmond, where the first case of COVID was detected in the United States, so outside Seattle. So I was suddenly osteopenic in 2021. And um, uh, I went to my physician and he said, well, we need to put you on a prescription for your bone mineral density. Well, knowing that those were no picnic to go through many issues surrounding taking those drugs, and they are not an ideal solution. They mostly reduce the rate of bone loss and don't rebuild bone. They are nowhere near what you'll see the results that I have actually had in changing my lifestyle. So the the big thing that I requested to my doctor was, can you give me a year? Can I have a year before I start bisphosphonates? That's the first line of defense. And he said, well, okay, and you'll see what my numbers were in a moment. So I instituted everything I knew that the research had shown to make a difference for my bone health. I started powerlifting 3 times a week, which I had done much younger, but I had stopped doing. I had actually become the most sedentary I'd ever been in that year prior. I was also 64 years old, a really bad time in life to not eat well, to not sleep well, to increase your stress, and to stop exercise altogether. I made sure I was sleeping. I made sure I was on an anabolic diet, consuming 1.7 grams of protein per kilogram per day. I was taking in at or above 30 calories per kilogram per day for my age and activity level was appropriate. I added creatine at 7 grams a day, 0.01 grams per kg. Calcium at 1,200 milligrams per day with food and supplements. I'm a big milk drinker. I have no problem with dairy. And making sure that I had enough vitamin D. My blood levels of vitamin D hover around 50 to 55. However, I do live in the Pacific Northwest, and so supplementing with vitamin D was quite important. Well, I want to show you my data. Now, of course, this is an N of 1. I realize that, but it is real DEXA data. So if you look at the first year, 21 to 22, and really the interesting is the percent change. You can see I was osteopenic, slightly osteopenic, not in terrible danger, but certainly going in the wrong direction. If in 2021, I had the values that I had. So I increased bone mineral density in both femoral necks. This is considered the most important measurement for assessing osteoporotic fracture risk. Jump ahead to 2024, and in 3 years, I still increased my bone mineral density. So percent change of plus 0.6 on the left femoral neck and plus 5.3% on the right femoral neck. So very significant changes. And my 10-year hip fracture risk is very low. So this is over 3 years, well post-menopause, 64 to 67 years of age. I really did not the first year do much cardiovascular, or I guess I'd say aerobic exercise. Certainly powerlifting is cardiovascular. But I focused primarily on making sure I religiously met my 3 days a week of powerlifting with an excellent trainer, by the way. So here is the most representative research data from the strategy that I implemented on myself. At 1 year, even with resistance training and creatine in this Chilibek-Kando study of 2015, there was bone mineral density loss at the femoral neck. However, the loss was significantly less than in the placebo group that also had resistance training, but without creatine. So you can see my data again. And a quote from Dr. Kando, a leading scientist in this area, and as I mentioned, co-author of this study that I am reflecting here. The difference, just above in yellow, the difference approaches clinical significance in his study where they still lost bone mineral density because a 5% decrease in bone mineral density is associated with 25% greater risk of fracture. In my on my own personal data, you can see I had a greater than 5% increase in my right femoral neck and certainly an increase in the left and no loss. So according to Dr. Kando, the maintenance, even small increase in bone mineral density is very big. Most females are decreasing. So according to his review that he gave me personally with his time, very well done. Good job, Sue. So here's the thing. When I went back and my doctor saw my data the first year, he said to me, you're not supposed to be able to do this. And I said, well, I'm not dead. It just takes a little longer. But he never asked me what I actually had been doing. And that's really a reflection of the fact that physicians don't believe that their patients will really actually ever change lifestyle, ever do anything. However, if they don't know what the possibilities are, then they have nothing to advise or recommend to their patients, and their patients are never even given a choice. So here's my passion. What can we do about this? Where does creatine fall? What are the recommendations that we can start to market and talk about in many different ways on many different platforms to get the message out? So, as I said, there really is a science of marketing. And if you are a brand trying to sell creatine to women, the field is wide open. However, success will require a really strategic approach to solve the problems that consumers have. Using marketing science is helpful in determining how to craft your message. We often talk about all the cool data that we've collected, but if it's not couched in a framework or a language or on a platform where consumers can hear that this is going to be a solution to problems that they're facing or that problems they anticipate having, they don't get the message. We have cool data, but it doesn't translate to an action on their behalf. If you are a scientist, pay attention to the ways that your data will need to be used to tell the story of how using creatine will be a solution for the problems that women face or anticipate in their lives. So here is a list of these various strategies, models, research models used in marketing. And I'm going to give you some examples, and then we're going to even go beyond these. But you'll see how these are activated in real life. So the first thing is we want to meet consumers' needs and goals. We need to know what they are. And in order to know what they are, we actually have to talk to our consumers or understand something about them. So there are published data. There's also real world examples, starting with the published data. Data from surveys of women supplement users show that women take supplements to promote health and as insurance against ill health. This strategy, these two, promoting health and as insurance against ill health, reflect two of the marketing theories that I had on the previous slide. The theory of planned behavior marketing model, healthy habits. The behavior economics marketing model, health promoting habits reduce health costs. So this is a really good place to begin. I had the privilege of speaking to Dr. Mary Claire Havel. Dr. Mary Claire is the founder and CEO of the Pause Life. The apostrophe pause stands for menopause. It has a very specific life stage strategy. She gave me just her time and her wisdom so that I could prepare this presentation, as I said, with some really good examples. These are her findings for goals for women. She found that women have high health expectations, that when she talks to them as patients, she tells them about their actual health outcome expectations and that they will be 20% lower than men. That's from the medical literature. Women have more chronic disease, are sicker for longer, and their restrictive weight loss dieting in particular is bad for long-term health, of course, particularly sarcopenia and osteoporosis. She dispels myths and misinformation. All of these represent, along with targeting a very specific life stage, menopause, this all targets societal norms or planned behavior. Dr. Havel frames creatine as preventing future health costs. And so here is the economics part of this behavior change. Their current lifestyle will lead to reduced bone health, fractures, and fragility. She leans in hard on lifestyle change, and they are at the time in their lives when they are ready to listen and change. And so this is what I learned in speaking to Dr. Marie Claire. So let's see other models. The framing theory. The framing theory discusses how information is framed and that how it is framed can significantly impact perception and decision making. So in this discussion that Dr. Marie Claire has with her patient, she frames it in a way that they perceive as important to them, right? They're thinking about the costs of their health and their health outcomes over time. Research within framing theory, particularly in public health communication, supports the idea that shifting from problem-focused language like illness and medicine to positive solution-focused language like health can lead to different outcomes in population behavior. So very important. In fact, I just went to a website that I consult with and I changed the language from talking about how the finished product that we're working with can improve the problems that you have to talking about giving you better health, more energy, more focus instead of a lack of memory, a lack of focus, a lack of energy. So this is important. Words matter. So altogether, there are 5 models around which brands can build marketing schemes. It's up to the brand really to decide their customer audience, needs, and goals. We know that certain communication styles are more well received and motivational than others. And so that's what I'm trying to represent here. The elaboration likelihood model, it really focuses on health-focused marketing. In our case, can appeal to people's desire for long-term wellness, potentially encouraging more reflective and enduring behavioral changes. Well, that's what we want. We don't want people to try our products and drop them. We want them to use them over the long term, and we want to help them understand how that works. So I mentioned that creatine for health is really this positive framing of our conversation. But when it comes to the ELM, encouraging preventive health behaviors rather than treatment is critically important. For me, I was lifting weights so that I didn't just, I mean, I couldn't imagine I would reverse osteopenia, to be honest. I wanted to stay as strong as possible for as long as possible. That was my goal. Everything else was gravy, and it certainly has been spectacular. So another couple of models, the psychological and emotional appeal, we know that as advertisers and marketers. I mean, we know that this is why it works, right? A psychological appeal, an emotional appeal. We are trying to offer health empowerment, personal empowerment through control of well-being. This gives the consumer a sense of proactivity, pro-action for their long-term health, but also for what's happening now. And a holistic approach. The term health encompasses a broader, more holistic view of well-being, mental, emotional, social. So creatine for whole body health really taps into this whole holistic view. If we focus on life stages or life transitions of particular concern to women, rather than a general wellness story, we will probably have more success relative to the psychological and the emotional appeal. Positive messaging around health during specific times, pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, postpartum, infant wellness, all of these, very specific life stages become an important hook for education and goal setting and actually changing behaviors. The holistic approach, health span. Clearly, we've moved on from longevity. And when we think of creatine, it really is how it affects our health span, how healthy we can be for as long as we can be. And so, strong mind, strong body, feel good, look good, be healthy. Health is wealth, once a day for bones and brain. Eat, lift, creatine, sleep, repeat. I know there's a good mnemonic in there somewhere, but I'm not the marketing guru. But these are the ways to positively sort of draw on these research models that we know are strategically successful strategies. And lastly, reducing the medicalization of everyday life. Now, I talked a lot about this a number of months ago where I was asked to talk about the whole concept of food as medicine, which I don't particularly care for. I don't think people want their food to be medicinal, and I understand that it is just a way of thinking about food, a way to sort of create a template to hang our marketing conversations on. But I think this idea of medicalization of everyday life is not appealing to everyone. Medical language can contribute to the medicalization of natural lifestyle transitions, and women really don't like that. Women do not want to think about their bodies as unnatural and that natural is male and that something is wrong with the female body because it goes through different transitional times. So the concept of creatine for health can normalize the concept of life cycle transitions and empower women to participate in their own wellness management. I really encourage you to embrace this model. I think it's very important if you're trying to appeal to women consumers. Well, we can learn from the best. Learning from quotes. And this is from Dr. Richard Kreider, who, one of the reasons we're here today. What we thought was just a sports supplement has now blossomed into something that can affect health from infancy all the way to elderly. This quote concisely wraps around all the marketing research models. It is just lovely. It is framed with a health focus. It encourages preventive health behaviors. It has positive messaging for psychological and emotional appeal. It is holistic in approach with a broad view of well-being. And by offering personal control, it reduces dependence on medicine. All the different frameworks are represented here. It is a wonderful quote. Well, to learn from brands, to see what are brands actually doing, I want to return first to the Pause Life, but then I have a number of brands doing really interesting things out there promoting creatine to women. So in the Pause Life, Dr. Mary Claire and her team has chosen to promote creatine to women around the life stage of menopause. So using not just one, but 5 strategies of that we know of these various marketing models. So highlighting cognitive emotional benefits. And I want to step back for 1 second, that the idea of choosing a particular life stage may a little bit for some brands feel like you are narrowing your consumer audience and your ultimate ability to sell your ingredient. But it is much better to sell to an entire life stage than to barely sell to everybody. And so, and you may start with one life stage. I mean, for instance, in the Pause Life, Dr. Marie Claire may be selling to women approaching menopause and beyond to start with. But at some point, undoubtedly, women a decade or two prior will start to think about what they're heading into and probably look to her as an authority to help them be their best as they enter menopause. So it seems as if according to the research of marketing, choosing a life stage for this category, for this ingredient, is probably a wise choice, but you may find something different because you find that you can jump around and straddle all kinds of life stages and still have success. So I am not, the word from on high. I am basing it on the science that I read. Okay, highlighting cognitive and emotional benefits. So the Pause Life underscores how creatine supports brain health, memory, and mood, particularly during menopause. The association with active and healthy lifestyle. It's presented as a supplement that aligns with fitness and recovery goals, physical strength, and energy during life transitions. The educational content that she uses through blogs and other resources. She also gives talks and she still sees patients. Um, she addresses myths and misconceptions about creatine, such as safety and effects on hydration and body composition. And so the educational approach is very reassuring and empowering. Holistic wellness integration. Creatine is marketed as part of a broader wellness toolkit. And so this is really important, a comprehensive approach. Um, uh, we saw certainly the creatine in that initial 2015 study that I presented. Creatine was essential to the success of the supplemented group, even though both both groups were doing resistance training. However, creatine alone would not have given those results either. So very important to have a comprehensive program and educational approach, sort of holistic. Community and personalization. The brand fosters a supportive community for women navigating menopause and provides resources to personalize their health and fitness journey. Again, reinforcing this concept of this is just a social norm. This is what people around me are doing, people in the know are doing, people who are like me are doing. And so creating that community, also a safe space, can be very important. Well, other brands. So, Women's Best. Their approach highlights a creatine for women, such as lean muscle maintenance, energy, and recovery. Their campaigns focus on relatable fitness goals for women, backed by blog posts and educational resources. And they do use testimonial. Many users report improved performance and recovery, aligning with the brand's fitness first message. So they are looking at a very different audience than the pause life. They are looking at the fitness minded woman. It could be at any age, but when you look at their photos, their Instagram, their social media, it is typically a younger woman, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, but they certainly, that is what their target audience is. Transparent labs. Their approach provides detailed explanations, debunking myths around creatine, such as bloating and bulking, via their website, blogs, and social media. This transparency builds trust, especially with first-time female users, driving higher customer loyalty. And I have an aside here, and I am leaving the brand unnamed. But there are brands, like in any ingredient, any industry, anyone that takes information and misconstrues it in order to sell their product, whether they understand that it's misinformation or disinformation. I can't speak to their intention. However, brand that, and there are a couple that are targeting women, uh, really sort of riff off of the misinformation about gut upset and bloating from creatine and say ours is different, ours doesn't do that. And so that's what this brand is saying, that if you use your husband's creatine or another creatine brand, you're going to get gut upset and bloating, but if you use our brand, you won't. And so don't create creatine myths. Be careful what you're talking about. And frankly, it may lead to short-term success, but unlikely long-term success, because these women will see other websites, read other information, talk to other people that they know, and they will ultimately learn that that is not a significant side effect of creatine, and they've been sold a bill of goods. They'll still get the benefit from the creatine. That's okay, but not poor information. Okay, Clean Athlete. They offer educational content. The approach offers blog posts, webinars, product guides, explaining creatine and its usage. Their educational efforts position them as a trusted source for women athletes and fitness enthusiasts. So it really changes a little bit of the focus, as they're a little more, I'd say, they want to give more of an academic vibe. Let's say that. So a little different approach. And Alani, a lot of social media here. Approach uses platforms like Instagram and TikTok to post workout routines, recipes, Q&A sessions featuring their creatine products. Alani knew. apologize. Full name of the brand is Alani Nu. These posts encourage interaction and community building, increasing brand visibility among women. And so again, the whole social media milieu is part of framing, is part of gaining sort of that social recognition. This is what's happening around me. This is what everyone I know is doing. And this shows me how I can use it in my life. These are the things I live a life like this, or I would hope to live a life like this. And so, all of you in marketing, these are things happening right now, and there are more. There are many more brands launching, I think, like every day. I saw a few more even after I put this presentation together. So, learning from brands, we are beginning to see innovation in delivery systems. Of course, the big one was starting to see gummies and other, I like to say, waterless delivery technologies. I work for a brand that has a powder that is a waterless delivery technology. So, powders, gummies, blends with a mission that may have nootropics, macros in them, electrolytes, whatever, adding creatine in, starting to tell that story that creatine should be kind of a foundational nutrient that we are adding for women's health, short, long-term fitness, maintenance, body composition, bone health, all of those things. The priorities for your consumer, you need to communicate with your consumer and learn their priorities, but undeniably taste, price, convenience, and efficacy. Those are the leading sort of priorities for what the consumer looks for. So now my call to my dear scientists, expanding the evidence on creatine to tell the stories that women want to hear. We really need more data on female athletes. I mean, look at what we're doing with a tiny small handful with some extraordinary scientists who are on the panel with me today. Female athletes during all life cycle phases, competitive, elite, and recreational. You know, we may know how women around pre, during, and post pregnancy and lactation, how they can be safe with their exercise, but do we know what they need nutritionally? No. So knowing some of that. How great would it be before you had intensive hormone treatments because you are finding that you're not able to carry a pregnancy to term? What if you might be able to just supplement with creatine to get pregnant? Wouldn't that be amazing? Or your male partner, maybe it's your male partner who needs the creatine. Could there be a test to find out? I mean, we really need so much more. How could we have more energy, better quality of life throughout pregnancy and postpartum, throughout our lives, right? So each transition time. Okay, I am not a unicorn. Um, I did it, I documented it, but I would not be alone, and I'm sure I am not alone. There are probably other women who have done just what I've done. We just don't know it. And so we need studies on comprehensive mechanistic studies on bone regarding creatine and these comprehensive approaches. Could we prophylactically prevent major bone loss starting before reaching peak bone mass even? We need data on younger women and longer term data. I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know you all want to do all of these studies and have long wish lists. Is the funding there? I know these are particularly difficult times. Certainly more around menopause, the impact of creatine on symptoms and quality of life. You can pick anyone, throw a dart at it, and you've got a study. Creatine is complementary nutrition with other therapies, especially GLP-1 drugs. I have a particular interest right now in cancer and cancer treatment and therapy post-cancer. And so I think that that's an area that is beginning to get a couple of studies. We have a presentation here. The body is beginning to grow, but the question is every cancer is different. And so in speaking to oncologists, they are afraid to recommend creatine because what if it's enhancing the energetics of the cancer? Each cancer is different. So lots of need there. More data on prehab and rehab for women and. So we could go on forever, but we don't have time for that. I want to let everyone else speak today. And this has been such a pleasure. Please think about these things that I've talked about today. I know it's very different than all of the scientific presentations. I tried to stay within the topic of science, but science for marketing. So if you're interested in my citations, I have them listed here. And I want to thank the sponsors and their teams. Sebastian, who was recording me today, the scientists, the research subjects, the curious consumers, and an innovative industry for making this conference possible. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you so much.